Hello, Jeremy. Let's jump right into it. Could you share a specific project where data helped you solve the problem, and what was the main goal you were trying to achieve?
Sure. Well, a big part of our work at Sticky Branding is working with organizations on their growth strategies. And a lot of the time,
Hmm.
especially post pandemic, has been working with distressed businesses that have lost, say, 30 or more percent of revenue. In the pandemic,
Hmm.
companies even lost upwards of 90% of their businesses. And
Hmm.
so when you're working with a distressed business that's trying to come back, data becomes so important because what happens is people start to look for signals in many different places, whether it's their gut, their
Hmm.
history, and other places to get some sense of validation of, are we on the right path? Are we trying to make choices? So to give you a very specific example, we work with
Hmm.
an organization that is in the automotive manufacturing sector. They make automation equipment for the OEMs and the car companies. And what's happened in the last 2 years is the auto companies have all pulled back, and it's been because of the transition in the industry away from EVs.
Hmm.
And so there's been a sudden precipitous drop in revenue. And so the question starts to come of A, we have a problem on our hands in that if we don't improve our revenue and our sales, we will break our banking covenant, or excuse me, our banking covenant, and we're going to have a financial crisis that could lead to layoffs, it could even lead to the closure of the business.
Yeah.
So what I, in a roundabout way of saying this, when you're working with an organization that is distressed and needing to find a new path forward, whether it's
Hmm.
in the automotive sector or any other business, data is the backbone of all of this because you need to have certainty that you're making the right decisions. And the
Hmm.
way we frame this is you're not going to get to results immediately. So the three steps are effort,
Hmm.
indicators, and then results. So what's the data that's going to give you the indicators to make sure you know you're on the right path?
Hmm. Okay, you mentioned three elements of solving this problem. Can you walk us through each of every step you are taking, to solve this problem for the for companies you are working with?
So in terms of the effort indicator results,
Yeah.
okay. So, in terms of sticky branding's process, we have a methodology for working with organizations that rapidly close this revenue gap. But in very basic terms, we think of the stage gates of how do you get to a result. So, if you think of this in
Hmm.
just very basic terms, in a B2B sale, it can take upwards of 9 months to build a sales funnel. If
Hmm.
a sales process takes, say, 3 months, you have to do the work to get in the number of leads that are going to then become opportunities, which are then going to become sales.
Hmm.
So, what is the behavioral activities that you're going to do? And this could be, in many cases, what we do at Sticky Branding is we create sales sprints. So, what
Hmm.
we'll do is we will do analysis and research with the client to understand what is the customer and their burning needs. What we want to try and
Hmm.
identify is what is a business problem or need that the CEO or executive buyer will actually make budget to solve. And if we
Hmm.
can get to that issue, then we can go and pitch to those individuals. And if they have that need, it will validate it and they will move
Hmm.
forward into a sales process. So in a sales sprint, what we're trying to do is validate, does this hypothesis of a market need actually exist, and can we provide the solution that supports it? So a
Hmm.
very simple thing might be go out and pitch this to 50 different companies.
Hmm.
After that, we use a win-loss card, which is a feedback loop. So you get qualitative feedback early on to say, how is this process working? And
Hmm.
then as you are qualifying and generating leads, you start to work into a sales process. And this is where your CRM starts to come in of tracking the activities that are going on here. But if the sales organization or even the company itself doesn't do the work first, it
Hmm.
doesn't really matter. You can be measuring things all day long, but if you're
Hmm.
not doing the effort, then it's just kind of dreaming.
Okay. While working on this projects, like what are the biggest obstacles you are facing? Like, do you facing some kind of data availability issues, maybe some kind of technical challenges? Like, what is usually the problem to make this make things happen?
I think there's three key problems that are coming up here. One is emotional, which is
Mm-hmm.
uncertainty. We've lost certainty in our direction, we've lost certainty in our systems, and that becomes a first issue.
Mm-hmm.
Second is culture. How are your people going to be moving forward? We think of this in the classic terms of fight, flight, or freeze. People
Mm-hmm.
have natural instincts in how they deal with danger. So do companies and cultures. So how are you rallying your culture to fight? And then
Mm-hmm.
finally, when it comes down to the data, that is a real challenge in many of these projects because we all are drowning in data. We have SEO data, we have Google data, we have search data, we have social media data, we have ERP data, we have CRM data, we have data everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends on your department and role. Some of this data is very relevant, but in a crisis and in a change process, it's really getting down to behavioral metrics, which can be hard to
Mm-hmm.
track because what you're looking for are leading measures. So if you think of this, there's lead and lag measures. A lead measure is going to be measuring the behavior that indicates a result, whereas the
Mm-hmm.
lag measure is going to be a result. So in that indicator stage of things, what are those lead measures? And there's probably only 3 to 5 that you need
Mm-hmm.
to be focusing on in order to get a sense of how things are moving forward. Now, where that data comes from is going to shift dramatically from organization to organization. But when you need to move fast, data becomes a real problem because there's the goal of perfectionism and they
Mm-hmm.
want to create the tableau reports and the business analysis. And half the time, what we look at is get a system that allows you to track and then
Mm-hmm.
automate it. So if you can do this in Excel and manually populate some of this data and start creating, say, a bowling lane where you've got the week on one axis and the result for each one of the KPIs, and just a straight line, 3 straight lines or 5 straight lines, and
Mm-hmm.
tracking the linear progress of it, often is enough. But getting someone to get away from the perfection and the pivot tables and all the other stuff, that is a big leap for some organizations.
And how do you propose to tackle that? Like, I know that there are people, myself included, that like making everything perfect, and it's usually the case to start small, like you say. Like, how are you persuading your clients to do this? And do you present some kind of results? Do you have some process in place to persuade them to go your way?
So I think there's two parts to this. In an
Mm-hmm.
organization in distress, they're far more open to change. So you don't
Mm-hmm.
have to make a big business case on it because they already know what the stakes are. It's when a company's successful that it's actually hard.
Mm-hmm.
So in a company in distress, what we're really looking for is asking what are those behavioral metrics? And that could be number of quotes. It could be looking at work in progress. It could
Mm-hmm.
typically at the business level, we're going to look at some basic metrics like
Mm-hmm.
orders received, backlog, revenue, and number of shipments. And whether it's on a
Mm-hmm.
week or a month or a day, you're getting some basic high level business metrics.
Mm-hmm.
And so the high level ones tend to be the easier ones to get. It's when you start to get the context of what it moves those ones, and you're looking at disparate systems at that point. So when we're trying to implement a change process, if the organization is stressed, they're going to be more receptive to it because
Mm-hmm.
they have a reason to change. When an organization is more successful, it really becomes a change management process where it's not only persuasion, but it's
Mm-hmm.
also a mandate. The CEO or the executive has to mandate it and it has to use the data. If you think of it, why do so many CRM projects fail? Is that the behavior is not enforced. And one of the most
Mm-hmm.
effective ways to enforce that behavior is to look at that system for the data. So if you're getting your data directly from the source, it's a lot easier to implement that behavior. But it's kind of this chicken and an egg scenario of what's more important. Is it getting the metrics you need, or is it using the systems you need? Both, there's going to be different situations to different companies. But generally speaking, what I think is useful is if you can prototype a system, even in Google Sheets or Excel, and get the structure in place, it works so much better to then automate that versus to start in the ERP or in Tableau or in the CRM or in some other application, because now you're using someone else's paradigm to manage your business, because there's baked reports already existing in there. But is that what you should be looking at? So I like to start out with, what is the intent? What is the thing we need to measure? What's the fastest, dirtiest, easiest way to get that out there, even if it's manual? And then automate that, because then you can create a system that's very sustainable.
You mentioned Google Sheet and starting in that. Like, what do you propose to others? I know that this could be different from company to company for sure, but for the people just wondering, they just want to start. They just want to take the data they have, or take the process they have, and they want to start. What would be the first step and steps after that? And what would you propose to add this to this MVP version of what they want to achieve?
Well, it depends on, I guess, which one we're trying to report. Let's just say we went back to the basic business report. There's a type of graph that I really like called bowling lanes or swim lanes. Bowling lanes, so you take, and you can Google this and go on to get a Google Sheet template or an Excel template of it. But basically, you would have on your row, you'd be tracking your columns by, say, week. So week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. It could be timed to the calendar year, to the quarter, whatever it is. And then on your rows going below that, what are the key KPIs that you are tracking? So that could be revenue, orders received, which would be closed or won sales, backlog, which is the pipeline of projects that you need to deliver, which is usually a forward-looking sense of health. You've got your shipments. So if we're in manufacturing or distribution, how many deliveries are there? But even if you're in software, how many implementations are taking place? What is the metric? Think of it through just a factory lens of what are your deliveries are? How are you measuring that? And you could put in things, even financial numbers like profit or EBITDA. And wherever that data exists, whether it's in your accounting system like QuickBooks or an ERP system, in your CRM system, somebody's tracking it just in terms of their own activities on a piece of pen and paper. If it's in a shared sheet and everyone can go in and populate it, and usually you would set out a department head. So the salesperson or the sales lead is populating their data, the ops lead is populating their data, the finance person is populating their data, and you just get into the habit of tracking it. What that does is allows you to have, say, a weekly huddle where we can be putting the weight or putting the numbers in. And a good metaphor to think of this is, think of it like losing weight. So in order to track your weight loss progress and hold yourself accountable, you got to get on the scale every day or at least every week, because if you stop doing that, your habits, you lose that data tracking. So the score, what your weight is giving you a result. But then you can use an app like MyFitnessPal to track your caloric intake. You got a lead measure and a lag measure. If you put both of those into your bowling lane and you can see the trend lines on there, what that allows you to do is at least respond when things are not going as expected. So you can ask the question, why did we have a change this week or this month, whether it went up, down, didn't change, stay the same? What's going on in our marketplace or our business? And then we can then look backwards to the behaviors to say, how do we affect these numbers? And so just using, I really like the bowling lane spreadsheets because they are linear and they are time-based, and we can habitually look at them every single week And what that
Mm-hmm.
allows us to do over time is guide and change the behaviors to support the goals we're aiming for.
Mm-hmm. And having this process in place, like how would you propose to ensuring data quality? You mentioned a few people already who are adding the data to different data points. And how would you assure that the data quality is best possible in this process?
In the early days, your data quality is not always accurate. I think
Mm-hmm.
there's something dirty about it, and putting the system in place is
Mm-hmm.
there. This is where I think data should go through a lens of total quality management, which is that continuous improvement cycle. So if you start out with bowling lanes in a spreadsheet, that is not perfect. That is manual labor. That is put
Mm-hmm.
your work boots and tie up your laces and get your hammer and go. What technology gives us today is the ability to get to good data. And so when you look at corporate dashboards, they can be incredibly sophisticated because they can be tracking not just simple metrics like revenue and orders received. You can
Mm-hmm.
be tracking data down to a departmental level or other things. But it all starts with you, in order to have very sophisticated data, you have to master it, because I think data is a skill. And not only, and it's a skill for a few reasons. Number one, collecting the data and reporting the data takes some effort, but also how do you analyze and use the data? Because what my biggest fear in so many organizations is we bring in and have all these reports that are largely meaningless because nobody acts on them. Think of it just like Google Analytics or GA4.
Mm-hmm.
There is so much data about your website, but what are you actually doing with it? Chances are the average business looks at it a couple times a year and does nothing. Even if you're running paid ad programs on there, you may be looking at it, but are you really looking at all of that data? So you've got all of this information, but if you don't use it, it's useless. So I think the skill set comes down to data collection and application. And there's also a third skill set, which is in the data entry and systems. That if your
Mm-hmm.
business is not run on effective systems, it's a garbage in, garbage out scenario. If your sales
Mm-hmm.
team isn't using the CRM consistently and in the same way, it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to pull out a proper forecast. And the same is true in your parts management, inventory management,
Mm-hmm.
accounting, finance. Just go down every single department. It's data. Good data is based on good business practices or good business systems. One of my
Mm-hmm.
mentors always used to say, great businesses aren't built on great people. They're built on great systems. And
Mm-hmm.
quality data is a good indicator that you've got good systems.
Mm-hmm. And who would you propose? You mentioned that the CEO should be the first person who implemented this data culture, and he should be, or she should be this person to lead the church. But how else would you implement data culture in every the department, so the people know how important it is and how important it is to gather data, how important it is to have the data used in their day-to-day job?
I think the actual champion of this is probably going to be the CFO or the finance
Mm-hmm.
lead, because they're going to be the controllers of the primary finance and accounting and ERP data.
Mm-hmm.
And that is probably the central point that everything needs to be built from.
Mm-hmm.
You look at it, that many organizations are siloed technology. The sales team has, say, Salesforce or HubSpot, and there's a
Mm-hmm.
different ERP and accounting system, and
Yeah.
engineering's using something differently, and every department has their own little tools and systems. And the chances are they don't talk very well with each other. So architecturally, if the finance organization is able to roll out from a centralized place, they can actually have a very powerful role championing not only systems but data, because it's tied to the core business metrics. That's also really dependent on the type of organization it is. Not all finance departments are fully integrated into operations. So it is a question of who should do it. But let's just say, generally speaking, the
Mm-hmm.
CFO is the champion. The CEO should be absolutely getting key information and pushing for more information. And then it really goes down into the varying department heads to look at how are we managing this. And I think this is where that CEO is so important, is setting the culture of accountability. And I say
Mm-hmm.
that really deliberately because data is your accountability tool. There's the old Peter Drucker quote, what gets managed or what gets measured gets managed. And so if we want to have a culture of accountability, it's got to be a data culture. But in order to have a data culture, we have to build out all those systems and structures on it. And so it is very much a down piece, because the leadership needs to look at it in order for it to be consistent and relevant.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay, let's look at the future for a minute. Like, what do you think will happen in the terms of new technology in the next 1 year or 2 years? Do you see something great on the horizon, or maybe even starting to using this right now for yourself or for your clients?
I think we're going through the greatest technological revolution since the internet. And I think AI is bigger than the internet. It's bigger than the PC revolution. It's bigger than the mainframe revolution. What is happening under our nose is so transformative, it's almost impossible to predict what's going to happen. We can see the early glimpses of it. I've been surprised in my realm of marketing how fast AI has integrated itself into the marketing realm in terms of content creation, graphic design, analysis, strategy development. One of the things that we look at as a consultancy at Sticky Branding is we think that AI can probably answer most of the technical questions that a company has and do a very good job at it. What's missing is context and experiences. And so it's not about the data anymore. It's about the application and the
Mm-hmm.
context of it that is so important. But what it comes down to what is it going to look like? I think the 1 to 2 year horizon is probably too short. I think we need to be looking at, say, 5 years and 10 years, because we're going to be in an in between stage where both paradigms exist at the same time. Think of it, we're going to be doing SEO and content creation because Google search is still powerful, while AI becomes another way of getting information. Who's going to be the leader of this in this market shift is still unknown. But I think the key message for every organization in every single department and every single function is, how can you A, automate with AI, or B, increase productivity with AI? And I'm very deliberate in those two things, because
Mm-hmm.
you look at it, and what it can do is it can leapfrog so many processes and systems. And as you do that, again comes back full circle to data, because so much of this stuff is new. What is the outcomes you're trying to get towards? So it always boils back down to your strategy and your business, because these shiny objects in this technology is wonderful. But if it's not used with purpose, then it's kind of just experimentation.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and on practical level, like, how are you currently using AI in your day-to-day work? Like, are there any specific prompts or approaches that have proven particularly effective for you on your in your day-to-day work?
One of the things that our team's doing, and it's been really effective, is SEO content creation. And so
Mm-hmm.
we use a pillar based approach where we will write ourselves long form content. And the reason we're doing that is it's to have our voice, our opinions, our expertise, because it's
Mm-hmm.
really easy to create, say, a 5,000 word article based on AI, but now you're just regurgitating someone else. So what are we trying to teach, or what is our point of view, becomes the pillar. But what
Mm-hmm.
AI allows us to do is quickly break that up into other content. So we use AI prompts to ask questions based on the article. So then we can now create, say, based on one 5,000 word article, we can prompt it to create a question. Say it's on brand messaging. How do I write a brand messaging statement? If it's in the article, it can extract it and pull out, say, a 300 to 500 word article on each question. And we can create using the same voice. And we typically use Claude AI for this to create, say, 5 to 10 more sub articles on that very rapidly. And what that's done is it's increased our productivity by about 5 times. So what used to take a person, say, 6 weeks to do, can do it in a week or maybe even a little bit more than that. But it's the hard work is the first piece of content, and then the atomization of the content, we use the AI system on that. We are also experimenting, this is very early days, of creating our own AI prompts for asking strategy discovery questions, which is core to our work. And the question that we really are experimenting with is, can we create the AI chatbot so that it can ask the discovery questions to a CEO who knows a lot, but may be missing holes in their expertise? And so that's an ongoing process of just getting the algorithm questions. Take brand positioning. Who and where are the customers that will drive your next stage of growth? What's the brand capabilities to serve that? What's the key business issues or pains that are going to be there? And you're jumping downward. So when we build that out, then it's what we're challenging ourselves on right now is it repeatable and consistent?
Awesome. Okay, finally, like based on your experience, what advice or a few advices would you give someone looking to leverage data more efficiently in their business?
I think my best advice is get started. Then if you don't use the data, what's so interesting about data is the more you use it, the better you get with it. It's truly a skill. And so the fastest way to get started is to uncomplicate it. You don't need to create fancy reports. You don't need to hire a business analyst. You probably will at some point, because that's where you need to automate it. But to get started, it's really looking at what are your lead and lag measures and what is the fastest way for us to get it, and then look at it on a weekly basis. And it's the act of looking at it and talking about it that makes the data useful. So if you simply get started and create the habit, it'll open you up to so much more. Think about, go back to this, the losing weight metaphor. It's like going to the gym. Nobody walks into the gym for the first time, unless you're a genetic freak, and squats 500 pounds. You're not going to throw a bunch of plates on there and just start crushing reps. You got to work your way up to it. So the first time you walk in the gym, you don't know what any of the equipment is. You don't know the layout of things. You're kind of awkward in figuring it out. You may want to work with a coach or consultant to help you navigate the place to build a routine and get started. But it's when you get started and when you're consistent that allows you to get stronger, that allows you to take on more advanced techniques, that allows you to maybe take on a sport and do much more with it. And I think the same is true of data. Just get started and the doors will just open for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being a part of DDDM Data Event podcast and answering all my questions today.
My pleasure. It was fun.